Flirting, that playful dance of attraction, is a universal human behavior that's been around for ages. From coy smiles and witty banter to subtle glances across a room, flirting transcends cultures and eras. But how did these flirtatious behaviors develop? Flirting may feel modern, but people have been making eyes at each other for millennia. In the classical civilizations of ancient Greece, Rome, India, and China, early ideas about seduction and courtship were recorded in literature and philosophy. For example, in ancient Greece, the concept of eros, passionate love, was personified by the god of love. Philosophers like Plato distinguished physical desire from higher love, while society recognized the skills of courtesans. Elite companions, known as hetarai, were admired for their intellectual charm and social grace. They engaged in witty conversation and subtle flirtation as part of their companionship. One historian notes that hetarai was seen not merely as a prostitute, but as an elite entertainer whose service of companionship emphasized flirtation and intimacy. Over in ancient Rome, we see a more overt study of seduction. The poet Ovid, writing around 2 CE, became a sort of ancient dating coach. His work, Ars Amatoria, The Art of Love, is essentially a how-to guide on winning a lover's affection. In a tongue-in-cheek manner, Ovid advises readers on where to meet potential partners. The theater and arena were prime spots, and how to charm them. Notably, Ovid was writing this in a time when Emperor Augustus was enforcing strict marriage law, which Ovid gleefully subverted by teaching Romans how to best seduce women regardless of their marital status. Ovid's Art of Love covers everything from sweet talking to handling jealousy, showing that the Romans treated flirting almost as an artful game, albeit one that eventually got Ovid exiled from being a bit too scandalous. The very existence of amatoria tells us that flirtation and courtship were recognized practices in need of mastering. Ancient Indian civilization had its own take on seduction and courtship. Most famously in the Kama Sutra, far from just a manual of intimacy, includes chapters in the etiquette of courtship and how to spark romance. It discusses courtship and the manifestation of feelings by outward signs, advising lovers on the art of conversation, appropriate humor and gestures to win affection. In fact, Vatsyayana's text treats love as a science and art, suggesting, for example, that carefully timed love letters, thoughtful gifts, and playful teasing are key steps before any physical union. Ancient Hindu philosophy considered karma one of the legitimate goals of life, and flirting was woven into the fabric of achieving emotional fulfillment. In classical Chinese culture, overt flirtation was often restrained by social norms, yet found expression in literature and the arts. Ancient Chinese poetry, for example, the love poems in the Book of Songs dating back 1000 BCE, celebrated subtle courtship rituals. Because marriages were frequently arranged, open flirting between respectable women and men was limited. However, in later eras, we see the rise of skilled courtesans who were masters of social flirtation. By the Ming Dynasty between 14th and 17th century, courtesans in China perfected seduction strategies to engage their companions. A recent study of Ming-era courtesans found that they divided the courtship process into phases: attention catching, interacting, and developing intimacy, and employed everything from graceful posture and flirtatious glances to poetic conversation and light touches at the right moment. These women were essentially professional flirts, adapting their signals to each suitor. Being adept at signaling seduction was crucial to their success. This historical insight shows that Chinese society too analyzed and valued the technique of flirtation. As we entered the medieval and modern eras, the ritual of courtship and flirting transformed alongside social norms. In medieval Europe, romance was heavily influenced by the doctrine of courtly love. Knights and troubadours in the Middle Ages developed a highly ceremonial way of expressing admiration for a lady, a far cry from today's casual flirting. They wrote love ballads, jousted in tournaments wearing ladies' favor, and engaged in prolonged, idealized wooing. This tradition captured in the tales of Lancelot and Guinevere or the poetry of the troubadours, essentially romanticized yearning and flirtation from afar. Courtly love was often illicit, yet portrayed as ennobling. It had unwritten rules. The lover must be chivalrous and beloved, often initially distant, and exchanges were indirect. One 12th century handbook, De Amor by Andres Capellinis, even attempted to codify the rule of love, from how to beg for a first kiss and how jealousy can fan the flames of affection. In essence, medieval flirtation was an elaborate performance meant to showcase one's devotion and virtue. It was flirtation under the guise of reverence, necessary subtlety in a time when marriages were contracts and open seduction could be scandalous. Moving into the 18th and 19th centuries, we see courtship becoming simultaneously more restrained and creative. Victorians developed a whole language of flirtation, using objects and gestures to convey interest covertly. A classic example is the language of fans. Women at balls or promenades would communicate messages by how they held and moved their handheld fans. For instance, carrying a fan in the left hand open meant, "Come talk to me." Victorian craving for discretion made flirting somewhat of a cryptographic art. Consider the use of flowers to send a coded message, a practice called florography. A suitor could say that he dared not speak by sending a bouquet. A red rose for passionate love, a white lily for purity, a yellow chrysanthemum to subtly indicate unrequited affection. For example, society publications even printed guides to the language of flowers so that these floral flirtations would be understood. Thus, a Victorian courting couple might carry out an entire flirtation non-verbally: a glance at a ball, an exchange fan signal, a secret bouquet with a note, and eventually a stolen moment in the moonlit veranda. Post-World War II, the dating culture boomed, and flirtation became a normal part of finding a partner. Each decade had its own style: the free-spirited 1960s and 70s, the encouraged open flirtation and mingling between the sexes at parties and clubs. And by the late 20th century, personal ads and matchmaking services emerged, adding a new dimension. In the 21st century, technology transformed how we signal romantic interest. We now flirt through text messages, social media likes, and dating apps. Online flirting has unique aspects in comparison to offline flirting. Real elements are present, but there's a blurring between reality and fantasy when one engages in flirtatious behavior on the internet. From medieval ballads to Victorian fan language to Tinder swipe culture, the methods of flirting have changed with each era's technology and social rules. Now that we've seen how flirting behaviors are embedded in culture and history, let's examine the biology underneath all of this. Flirting isn't just cultural, it's also biological. Our bodies and brains play a huge role in how we signal attraction. Often without even realizing it, we send and pick up on dozens of nonverbal cues when flirting. Along with dopamine, other brain chemicals and hormones jump into the mix. Oxytocin, often dubbed the love hormone or cuddle chemical, is released during physical touch and orgasm, and it helps deepen feelings of attachment and trust. When you flirt through gentle touch or long gazes, oxytocin can rise, making you feel more bonded and comfortable with the person. Norepinephrine also spikes in the early phases of attraction, causing the heart-fluttering excitement and even the loss loss of appetite that some feel. Interestingly, serotonin levels tend to drop in the early stages of infatuation, which some researchers think creates the obsessive can't get them out of my head feeling, a bit akin to the neurochemistry of obsessive compulsive disorder. In summary, the biology of flirting involves a symphony of signals, brain chemistry that fuels the thrill. We share many of these mechanisms with other animals, highlighting that flirting is partly an evolved mating behavior, yet human flirtation is uniquely complex. We layer cultural norms and personal creativity on top of these biological foundations. Still, next time your pupils dilate and your heart races, you'll know it's not magic. It's Mother's Nature way of saying, hey, pay attention. This could be important for your genes. Biology explains how we flirt, but to understand why flirting exists at all, we need to think in terms of evolution. Let's see how flirting might have evolved as part of a human and even animal courtship strategies. Flirting isn't an arbitrary human quirk. Evolutionary scientists believe it's deeply rooted in the mating strategies that have helped humans and other species reproduce successfully. In evolutionary terms, any behavior that aids in attracting a high-quality mate or in choosing the right partner can be favored by natural selection. Flirting is essentially a set of courtship signals that indicate interest and often advertise one's value as a mate. In the animal kingdom, especially in species where females invest more in offspring, males often evolve flamboyant courtship displays to woo choosy females. Think of the peacock's tail. Peacock's brilliantly colored giant tail is a flirting device. It's energetically costly to grow and carry around, but it sends a message to females, I'm so fit that I can afford this ridiculous tail. I must have good genes. Similarly, male songbirds serenade females with elaborate songs, and many species perform dances or show off their bright breeding plumages. Biologists call these honest signals of fitness and are hard to fake traits that correlate with the male's quality. Only a healthy peacock can maintain a perfect tail. Only a well-fed bird can sing vigorously. The idea is that females evolved to be attracted to these signals because choosing a male with good genes or good health boosts the chances of viable offspring. This is the foundation of Darwin's theory of sexual selection. Traits that don't help survival but do help mating can evolve and become quite exaggerated, like the peacock's tail or the dances of paradise birds. Now, humans don't have neon feathers or literal mating dances. At least not built in, though we do dance socially. Instead, humans have evolved more behavioral and psychological display. Firstly, when you flirt, you're often showcasing your best self. Perhaps you crack jokes to display your humor and wit, or you brag about your job or hobbies to signal resource potential or skills. You might dress attractively or practice good manners to demonstrate social polish and health. All of these can be seen as human analogs to the peacock's tail. They can signal underlying fitness. For instance, intelligence and creativity are highly valued traits in human mates, and evolutionary psychologists have argued that behaviors like humor, storytelling, or art could be an evolved area of courtship signaling. A clever sense of humor is hard to fake and may indicate mental agility, so it can be very attractive. In fact, studies have found that humor ability correlates with mating success, suggesting it did evolve at least partly through sexual selection as a fitness indicator. It's also worth noting an evolutionary quirk. Because men and women historically faced different mating challenges, their flirting behaviors and interpretations can differ. Evolutionary psychologists often point out that men on average are more likely to overinterpret friendly behavior as sexual interest, whereas women are more likely to underinterpret sexual interest as just friendliness. This mismatch, sometimes leading to comedic or unfortunate situations, could be rooted in error management theory. Each sex errs on the side that would have been less costly in ancestral conditions. Thus, men might have evolved to be more forward and persistent in flirting, while women might have evolved to be more cautious and coy. Now that we've looked at the big picture evolutionary reasons for flirting, let's zoom into the individual level and the psychology. Flirting is as much a psychological exercise as it is a biological one. It's about reading people, managing your own nerves, and employing just the right mix of behaviors to send the intended message. Psychologists have extensively studied how we flirt and why, uncovering some fascinating patterns in nonverbal cues, interpersonal dynamics, and even personality difference in flirting style. Psychologists have noted that humans have universal language of love, rooted in body language. These non-verbal signals, a smile, a gaze, a touch, can speak louder than words in conveying interest. When we're around someone we find attractive, our posture and gesture change. We might straighten up, face the person, and make frequent eye contact. Research indeed suggests that a lot of flirting is executed through these non-verbal cues. For example, women often have specific flirting gestures observed across cultures. Tossing one's hair back to expose the face and neck, licking or biting lips gently, or smiling and giggling at a man's jokes more than necessary. Men, on the other hand, might stand a bit taller, subconsciously flex their muscles, or adopt open body positions to signal confidence. Both sexes engage in the classic flirtatious eye game. Another subtle sign are our pupils. Our pupils dilate when we look at someone attractive, an involuntary response linked to arousal. So literally, our eyes light up around a crush. Even mirroring happens. People in flirtatious situations often unconsciously mirror each other's movements. If one person tilts their head or takes a sip of their drink, the other might do the same shortly after. This mirroring is a sign of rapport and attraction, indicating a subconscious desire to sync up with the other person's behavior. Besides visual cues, voice plays a big part. The way we talk changes when flirting. Flirtatious speech tends to be more animated, we laugh more, our tone is warmer and more sing-song-like. Interestingly, research on voice attractiveness shows a pattern. Men often lower their voice pitch slightly when speaking to someone they find attractive, while women tend to raise their pitch a bit to sound more feminine and friendly. Studies have generally confirmed that a lower-pitched male voice and a higher-pitched female voice are perceived as more attractive by the opposite sex. This likely has evolutionary roots. Deeper male voices can signal higher testosterone and physical size, and higher female voices can signal youthfulness and fertility. Flirting, as we've seen it, is a far more than a mere frivolity. It's a multifaceted behavior, from ancient philosophers discussing love's virtues to Victorian ladies signaling with fans. The form of flirting has continually evolved with culture, yet the function remains the same: to bridge the gap between two people, turning spark into flame. It's a reminder that human social behaviors are complex. Something as seemingly simple as a flirtatious hair twirl carries echoes of ancient custom, genetic fitness signaling, and personal intentions all at once. Flirting is fun, but it's also profound. A dance that both our ancestors and our near ones know well. The next time you catch yourself blushing at a compliment or sending a flirty text, remember that you're participating in an ages-old ritual, and that it's been pondered by philosophers, honed by evolution, and analyzed by scientists. It still retains this magic when two people just click.